and welcome to another video. This is episode 49 of the podcast, and as per usual, let's just get straight into it. I would first like to talk about the Isager Archives collection. This has been a project that I've been working on for the past, I think at this point, 6 months now, something like that, ever since the collection came out. I recently counted how many pieces in total I was planning on knitting up, and it's 13 pieces. For the most part, it's a sweater. I think there's one shirt, and then there are 2 skirts as well. Either way, I have finished 3 sweaters, 1 cardigan, and 2 pullovers at this point, and I'm getting close to finishing my 4th sweater. And that is the Johanne loop sweater by Other Loops. Yeah, this is how far I've got. Oh, I forgot to mention how many days it's been since the last podcast episode. It's been about a week. So yeah, it took me about 6 days to work through this. But yeah, I have a lot to talk about when it comes to this sweater. But first, let me give you some specifications. So the yarn that I'm using is from Ístex. It's the plötulopi. It's an unspun yarn, 100% wool, and it has a yardage of 150 meters per 150 meters per 50 grams. So it's a sport weight yarn, but it's unspun yarn, which is it's not spun yarn. So I wanted to say it's not your regular yarn, but yes, it's not spun yarn. So you have to be quite careful when you knit it because it's just very fragile. So technically it's a sport weight yarn, but yeah, with this sweater I managed to get a gauge of 20 stitches in 10 centimeters, or 4 inches for the Americans watching. Yes, so the colors that I used were or are dark amber heather. This is the contrast color. The code is 1426, and then I have chocolate heather as the main color, and that code is 1032. I don't even know where to start with telling you a bit about the journey of this sweater. Well, if you have watched previous episodes, you'll know that this was actually supposed to be a light purple sweater. I even forgot to tell you about the construction of the sweater. Maybe that would be a better way to start off. So yes, as you can see, it's a drop shoulder construction. You actually start at the top. You knit the back. You do some short row shaping. Then you start the color work. You increase for the armhole shaping, and then you do basically the same thing at the front, but in addition you have, of course, the neck shaping. And then once you have reached the armhole section here, you just knit in the round all the way down. You do some 1x1 ribbing, come back to the armholes, pick up stitches, then you knit the sleeves, and yeah, you do just basically the same thing. It's completely the main color, and then the last couple of rows you have one of these color work sections, and then you do 1x1 ribbing. Yes, so that's the construction. I had originally planned to make this with 100% alpaca yarn, sport weight, light purple and dark purple. I was struggling with the gauge, with the drape of the fabric. Just a lot of things were not going like I wanted them to go. And then I found out that it's not really a good idea to knit a sweater with 100% alpaca due to the yarn not having that much memory or any memory at all. And so I decided to start looking for some other yarn, and that's how I ended up on the website of Edna. This is the Dutch and Belgian distributor of Yerbo yarn, Svarta Fåret, and Ístex. So 2 Swedish yarn companies and 1 Icelandic one. And they were doing a very good sale. At the time, they had kind of these influencer coupon codes that I found via their Instagram. So I got 30% off of any yarn on their website. I didn't have a code as an influencer. I found someone, an Instagrammer, who had their own code, and I used that for it. Yeah, I've never been sponsored or anything like that. But as I was saying, that meant I got a really good deal. And so I started looking for yarns that might be suitable for the projects of the Isager collection that I'm working on, because yes. Okay, I'm going off a bit on a tangent here, but having gone through the Isager Archives collection and actually trying to calculate how much it would cost to knit up these sweaters and these other pieces with the recommended yarn, I've come to realize that a lot of modern popular patterns, I wouldn't say require, but more so kind of try to push you towards the direction of spending a lot of money on yarn in order to get a nice sweater. So there are lots and lots of patterns now that require 2 strands, 3 strands, even 4 strands of yarn, and very expensive yarn at that. So and regardless of the brand that they recommend, the yarn itself is also very expensive, because most of the time it's just a thin woolen yarn, which, you know, you can get actually quite cheap if you know where to look for, and if you're willing to wait and lurk on all these yarn websites to get good deals. But then you also have silk mohair, which gets recommended a lot, or Surrey alpaca silk, yarns that are just very expensive in general. And so if you want to knit these sweaters at a more affordable price point, you're going to have to do the maths yourself and figure out which type of yarn would look best that is one-stranded, that you can then use to make the pattern with. And yeah, that's what I've been doing for, I think, all of the patterns of the Isager Archives collection. No. The Inga sweater by Lenit actually does use 1 strand of DK weight yarn, so that was not that much of an issue. But the rest, it's required a lot of research, and I've definitely learned from that, so I don't regret working on these patterns. But yeah, still, it's just something that I think about. This year I've been trying to be more aware of how much money I'm spending on yarn, and in particular how much money I'm spending per project. So yeah, as the podcast continues, you'll see more about me talking about prices and stuff like that. I know someone mentioned it in a podcast that I recently released, but yeah, definitely also for the end of the year review of all the things that I've knit, I have been calculating how much money I've spent on materials to make these projects. yes, so having said that, I got a good deal via Edna, and yeah, they were selling about 100 grams of this plötulopi for €7.45 just without the deal. And so I ended up getting these these plates for about €5 per 100 grams, which is a really nice deal. Yeah, so there's that. Before buying plötulopi, I hadn't worked with unspun yarn before, and I didn't know that there were certain things that you needed to know in order to work comfortably with this yarn. It's just very fragile. So you have to be very cautious of your tension, but you also have to be very mindful when it comes to yarn management. When you're working on a project, you have to slowly unwind the yarn, knit up a piece, and then unwind another piece. And in the end, I am very, very happy with the end result, how it is. It's very lightweight but very sturdy as well, because the fibers of the wool are very long, and so they're very strong once you knit them as compared to when the yarn is wrapped up in the plates. So it's very cool yarn to work with. I was struggling a lot at first. In particular, I was struggling a lot when it came to trying to get a more tight fitting gauge, so a smaller gauge. Does that make any sense? I have not been able yet to get lower than 20 stitches per 10 centimeters with 3mm needles. So yeah, that posed a bit of an issue when it came to the Johanne loop sweater, because it's an oversized sweater. The bust circumference of the smallest size is 108 centimeters, which was a bit too big for me, so I wanted it a bit smaller. But the gauge of the sweater is 22 stitches per 10 centimeters, and so now I'm working with a looser gauge whilst actually wanting to work with a tighter one so that I could cinch in the sweater a bit. And so in the end, I kind of gave up on the idea of trying to go down a size by just knitting at a tighter gauge. And so I had to kind of rework the entire sweater for myself, because not only was my stitch gauge off, my row gauge was as well. So I had to rework all of the short rows, the armhole depth, the sides. There's also a stitch pattern or a motif. The colorwork motif is also here at the body, so I had to look for a stitch count that worked well with it. A lot of things that I had to think about. I spent some hours figuring it out, calculating things, and yeah, once I finished that, I just gave it a go, and it's worked out pretty well. So it looks to be about 99 centimeters, the bust circumference, which is what I had calculated it to be. I will put some B-roll here on the side so you can see how the fit is on me. I really liked how I had modified my Norma sweater by My Favorite Things Knitwear, and the positive ease on that sweater was about 17 centimeters. So I think when it comes to oversized sweaters, that's kind of the range, 15 to 20 centimeters. That's what I'm going to try and aim for in the future as well. So like I said, I had reworked the sweater and I had written it all down, and so knitting it up went quite smoothly this week. I found that my row gauge was a bit off from my initial calculations, so I did have to lengthen the sweater at certain sections, but I think all in all it went quite well. I do have to say that I made a couple of mistakes, or I think I was experimenting, I think, because of course when you're working with color work you have to think about color dominance, and so when it came to at least this first section here, right, I knew I wanted to have the amber heathered yarn to be the dominant color. And so then I came to the second section and then I thought, maybe it's then better to have the brown be a bit more dominant. And so I started knitting the sweater in that way, and it was just not looking that nice. So I had to rip back about 7 rows and then knit with the heather again as the dominant color. And then I tried, I think here again with the checkered section, I tried with the brown again as the dominant color, and that also did not look all too nice. I don't know if it's necessarily the way that I knit color work, but the red just disappears no matter what. Even if there's more red or orange, more amber than the brown, the amber just poof disappears. So I've just decided to keep everything consistent and just keep the amber as the dominant color, and I am really liking how it looks. I blocked this section right here with an iron, and so this looks a bit scrumpled up, but yeah, I'm at the part where I'm doing the ribbing. Since my row gauge was a bit looser than in the pattern, I did stop the bottom a bit earlier. So yeah, I think, is that everything I wanted to say about this pattern? Oh yeah, I completely forgot the needle size. For the rows with just one color, I used 3mm needles, and then for the color work I used 4mm needles, and for the ribbing I'm going to do 2.5mm, as I tried doing the ribbing with, wait, did I say 2mm needles? Because I tried doing it with 2.5 and it wasn't looking all that nice. I'll talk a bit more about that in the next project. But yes, I do want to say one thing about the pattern that I don't appreciate, and that is the formatting. I really don't like, and I just uploaded my patterns pet peeve video, but and I spoke about this as well, but I do not like when a pattern has pictures put throughout. For one, it's not useful. I would just like to have the text there, but also if I want to print it out, I'm going to be wasting so much ink on a picture that is not useful to me when I'm knitting the pattern. And one thing happened that kind of bothered me, and that was that you had this text, so there are 2 columns, so you had here some text and you had here some text, and I was looking at it on my computer, and at the bottom here there was a picture. So I got to the end of the page, or so I thought, got to the end, scrolled down to the next page, and then continued knitting. And then I looked at some pictures on Ravelry of other people knitting up this sweater, and I saw that there was something missing at the bottom of my sweater, a couple of rounds of stockinette stitch, and I was confused because I was looking at the pattern and I couldn't see where this section was stated. Apparently you had the first column, the second column, the picture, then 2 sentences telling you to knit a number of rounds, and then the next page. And so I missed out on that, and I had done about 6 rows of ribbing, ripped that out, and then started knitting about 4 rows of stockinette stitch. I took out a number of rows, like I said, so yeah, that was a bit unfortunate. Very quickly, I would like to tell you about radio taiso. This is a sort of calisthenics exercise that occurs on, I believe, the NHK radio, the national Japanese radio station, where every day at 6:30 you have a nice music moment where you do some calisthenics for a number of minutes. I think maybe 3 or so. I'm not too sure, but I found a YouTube video. There are actually a lot of YouTube videos of this calisthenics exercise, and I've just been using them during my knitting breaks. So these are very easy exercises to get your blood running a bit, and I just thought it was a great quick exercise to do, so I wanted to share that with anyone who might be interested in that. And one thing why I think this exercise is very neat in particular is that they also have a wheelchair option, so to speak, that you can just do if you aren't able to walk, or if you just want to sit at your desk and do a couple of exercises. So it's just one video, you have one person standing up, and then you have one person sitting down, and then they're just doing like stuff like this and going down, and it's just very nice in my opinion. So I thought I'd share it. I'll leave a link to that in the description box below, and do let me know if you end up using it, if you thought it was helpful in any way. I don't know, I was just really excited about that, and I've been wanting to say this in other podcast episodes, but I kept reading over it in my notes. So yeah, here you have it. Now we're gonna get back to the Isager Archives collection. I am working on the Flora Slipover by Camilla Vell. Yeah, I believe the D is silent. Yes. So this is also knit with Ístex plötulopi, the unspun yarn. The colors that I'm using, the main color is dark gray heather 9102. We have again the dark amber heather, which is 1426, and then we have some light ash heather, which is 1026. Yep, so it is a bottom-up slip over. You cast on, you work the ribbing for a number of centimeters, and then you get into this colorwork section. The fun thing about this as well is that the gray of the ribbing continues up into the colorwork section, just the first 3 rows, and then it just goes into plain colorwork, just stockinette stitch. And I am using 4mm needles for the colorwork, and what's crazy is that I used 2.5mm needles for the ribbing, and the ribbing is still so big. I don't know if this is going to bother me a lot in the end, but if it does, I'm not too worried about it. I am just going to pick up the stitches afterwards, and I'm just going to reknit the ribbing with 2mm needles. So yeah, I spoke about this pattern, I believe 2 episodes before, when I started the ribbing, and it was just really big. It was just not working out. But then once I got some more confidence from working on that Johanne loop sweater, I felt that I could start working on this slip over again. So I am knitting at the same gauge as the other sweater, 20 stitches per 10 centimeters and 23 rows, and that's quite off from the gauge, the original gauge of this pattern, which is 18 stitches per 24 rounds. So this is actually tighter than the original, and that is actually quite nice because the bust circumference of the smallest size is 93 centimeters, I believe. And in the pattern, when it comes to sizing, they recommend positive ease anywhere between -5 centimeters to +5 centimeters. And +5 centimeters would be about a bust circumference of 87 stitches, 87 centimeters. So my size was not included, and so I figured, if I have this smaller gauge, I can just knit the first size and then it'll be a bit more fitting. And so I made sure to do all the calculations, made sure that the bust circumference would make sense by going down with the gauge that I am knitting with. So it would go from 93 centimeters to 84 centimeters. So that would give me about +2 centimeters of ease. And yeah, I made sure to look how many stitches more I would have to decrease at the armholes. I basically just checked the entire pattern, and I've written down my notes to ensure that it'll fit me well. I read through the entire pattern, and I feel like I've just been complaining so much these past couple of weeks. Reading through the pattern makes me suspect that it wasn't tested in English, because there are quite some Danish terms, words still in there. The part that I struggled with the most were the decreases at the shoulder. You knit up evenly until the underarms, there's no waist shaping or anything like that. You cast off a couple of stitches, then decrease a couple of stitches, then you work evenly again, and then you do the neck shaping for the front, and the back is just straight up. And then once you're up here, you use decreases to attach the front to the back. And the way in which these decreases are written down, it took me, I'm not even lying, 20-30 minutes to understand what was being said, because it was terms like, first you pick up the second stitch, and then with your left hand needle you pick up this stitch, and then you move it over to the other stitch. And I feel like a lot of the words that were in that section could have been left out. I think what they were looking for in terms of knitting terms was slip, stitch, purlwise, but then it's completely written out with pick this up and then put it here, and then it's, in any case, I got very, very confused there, and it took quite some time to figure that out. So definitely not my favorite pattern that I've seen so far. I think for me the nicest patterns from this collection so far have been the Collar Cape by Anne Wenzel, and also the Inge sweater by Lanit. I think Lanit is top for me because there are, if I remember correctly, no pictures in between the pattern, written very succinctly, clear, just really good. But who knows, maybe once I've knit through all of them, I'll do like a ranking video and evaluate my experiences or evaluate the patterns. So I think that's everything for the Flora Slipover. I have a bit of a sock update, and that is that I have unraveled the Timmer socks and also the Memento Mori socks. And I unraveled the Memento Mori socks because the collar work got really tight on my foot, and I didn't want that. Obviously, I didn't want to struggle every single time I'm trying to put on my sock. And the Timmer socks, the gauge was just very loose. And I think the reason why I kind of struggled with these socks, because also I tried to knit up a pair of socks this week, just a pair of basic socks, and it just didn't work either. I think it's because I changed my way of knitting. I used to knit English style, but now I'm a continental, or I should say combination style knitter, and my gauge has completely changed. I was dealing with a lot of rowing out at the start. I changed because of a shoulder issue. But yes, I was rowing out quite severely for some time, and now I've managed to get the gap a bit closer again, which I'm very happy with. The only issue now is that I didn't realize that I am knitting looser than I did before, and so my original stitch counts that worked very well for socks for me don't work anymore. So I have to kind of reinvent the wheel again for myself in terms of socks, and I've been looking for some sock patterns. Well, not looking for, I have some sock patterns that I own that I've been eyeing to knit up. So I'm just going to try and find a couple that I might knit up before the end of the year. I know it's October, but I'm I'm not much of an event type of person. I mean, I love Halloween, things like that, but just challenges don't really work for me. When I set goals, it's very hard for me to reach them, which maybe that's a character flaw, but I don't know where I was going to, if I was going anywhere with this thought, but yeah, it's October. I'm going to try and knit some socks, not because it's October, but just because I realized that my sock knitting is just not where it used to be, and I want to get it steady again so that once I do need new socks, I don't have to struggle through finding out the gauge, etc., etc. Because now I do see that some of my socks are starting to get a bit worn out. Who knows, this might be the reboot of Sock Saga of last year. So, unraveled all my socks that I've been working on. Next up, I would like to talk about the Dagmar jacket by Petite Knit. I had a jacket quantity of, surprise, dark green. Dark green yarn that I had initially intended to knit the Esther jacket for the Isager project, and since I ended up buying the Esther sweater first, I felt there was no need to also buy the jacket version of it or even knit up the jacket version of it, and so I ended up getting the Dagmar jacket because I thought it could be a very interesting knit in terms of construction modifications. I wrote down a couple of notes that I wanted to talk about. I have, well, you know this book at this point. I think, I hope. Hopefully you're watching more podcast episodes. This is the yarn. This is again from Järvo. I think I got this at a good price. Yes, I did, definitely. So this is Svensk ull, 4 trådar. I'm a bit rusty with my Swedish, but yeah. It is an Aran weight yarn, 135 meters per 100 grams, which is 67.5 meters per 50 grams. And the color is 59108. I think it also has a name. It's Pine Tree Green. Yes, we have another green knit going on. I'm sorry if it is starting to get a bit boring or overwhelming with the colors, but I am trying to knit up all sorts of things. In any case, yes, the construction of the Dagmar jacket, and I want to say this. I was pleasantly surprised that this pattern had a schematic, and I think that's kind of the thing that pushed me over, because I would have to do less work, or yes, I would have to do less work in terms of understanding the pattern. If you go down on the page of the Dagmar jacket, you can actually just click on a file or a link and you have the file of the schematics. So I believe it has the armhole depth, the arm sleeve circumference, bust circumference, sleeve length, I think, as well. In my opinion, the bare minimum of measurements. But going back to the actual construction, it is a top-down drop shoulder construction with lots of cables going on, and the way you start with the jacket is that you cast on a number of stitches at the back, and then you start increasing, creating this line that goes all the way down. And then once you've worked that, you pick up stitches for the left and right side of the jacket, and then once you've worked your way down, you connect the piece and then you knit the rest of the body, and then you pick up stitches for the sleeves. Now the jacket is supposed to have an oversized fit, and the thing with this construction in particular is that you're only increasing one stitch on each row on each side, and so you can't really do much about the slope that you're creating at the back, especially now that it's oversized. The slope goes all the way down. In order to get that oversized fit, you are creating very huge armholes, because if you look at the schematics, I think it says that the armhole depth of the smallest size is 31 centimeters. That's about here. That would be about this for my size. And for me, that is just a bit too much. I think also in the pictures you can see that the sleeves are just very, very low at the body. And another thing that happens with the pattern is that you have this diamond cable going at the front and at the back. And I think what a lot of people like is having the diamonds at the front match the one of the back. But because you're creating this slope, you're essentially cutting through that diamond, and that's what results in having half of the diamond cut off and then the full one at the front. Having said that, I thought it would be a fun idea to try and modify this jacket and make it to my own liking, and so I came back to this book again. I feel like this is at this point a mainstay for the next coming couple of episodes. This book is called Jibun Saizu no seettaa o amu Skina Saizu Skina ito de amu Hoho by Tomoko Nishimura. Knitting a sweater in your own size with your preferred size and your preferred yarn. It's just a great book. I feel like this doesn't even need that much of an introduction on this channel anymore. In any case, the drop shoulder section has, let me see, has 3 different types of drop shoulder constructions. And the one that I thought would be very nice is this one right here. This is drop shoulder C. They call it Guernsey or Guernsey type, and that's because it looks, or it has the same structure as a traditional Guernsey type sweater. So I don't know if you might be able to see it here all that well, but maybe I can just paint a picture for you. So essentially how this works is that you just work a straight tube, then you cast off stitches for the armhole, then you work up straight, you do the arm the neck shaping at the front, and you also do neck shaping at the back, and then there's no shoulder shaping here, and then you seam the front to the back, and then you have the sleeves, which you just pick up stitches all around the armhole and you just start decreasing. That's essentially what the construction is. And so in that way you eliminate the increasing on the sides, and that's how you can keep the diamond continue. That's how you can continue the diamond from the back to the front. So that in my nutshell so that in a nutshell is my plan. And I am also planning to take a bit off from the side. There is some moss stitch that I can just easily eliminate, and I'm just going to start the armhole shaping a bit earlier so that I'll have an armhole depth of about 18 to 20 centimeters. I found that that's the most comfortable for me, about 18 centimeters, but maybe, I guess since this is supposed to be a jacket and you're supposed to be wearing something, maybe even a sweater underneath it, I was thinking of increasing the armhole depth a bit more, but that's just something that I am going to look into once I get to that point, because honestly I haven't done all that much. It took a lot of time to figure out the increases and the decreases at the neck shaping here, because you also have that continuous cable at the front from I think it's the honeycomb cable you have here at the front, and I wanted to keep the sweater as much looking like the original. So that was a bit of thinking on my part. So what I have here is the back. Is the shaping for the back. Like I said, there's a bit of a scoop at the back, so if you're knitting top down you have to increase. So that's essentially what's here. I need to make this for the other side as well, and then cast on with a backward loop cast on, and then I can knit the back a bit more to a more substantial size than this little thingy here, and then I can either choose to pick up stitches for the front, or I think what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do a provisional cast on, and because that's also what I've done here, if you can see with the purple yarn, I used a provisional cast on because I thought, you know what, I really like the 3 needle bind off, so I'm going to try and do that just to make it clean. To make the seam very clean and it just crisp, aligned correctly. So that's the plan with this jacket. I also made a gauge swatch, which I don't have with me right now, but maybe I can go and get it. Oh, I even completely forgot what I went to get, but I have it here. I just did the honeycomb. I'm not too worried about the gauge because it's going to be oversized anyway, and there's a range that I'm fine with. So I'm pretty sure that I was spot on, but if I'm a stitch off, I don't think that would be the worst thing. So that's everything for the Dagmar jacket. I think it's going to be either a project that is going to linger and just completely fail, or it's something that I'm going to finish at some point. Just I'll have this spurt of energy and I'll finish it in I don't know, a week or something, but we'll just have to see. In any case, I would just like to give a small update on the scarf situation that's been going on. I have here Swan by Yoke or Kaze Kobo from her book Makimono. Here's the book. It's a circular scarf that I've been working on. I'll give some specifications, but first let me show you what I've done this past week. Not much. I actually just continued this morning, so the progress that has been made is oh shoot. Okay. The progress that has been made is this section right here. So last time when I spoke about this shawl, I had finished the body, and I just needed to work on the frill section. So a bit of a recap. This is, like I said, a circular scarf with a garter stitch border, which also has some lacy yarn overs. There's some yarn overs in the body as well. Essentially, you work some stockinette stitch, then some garter stitch with lace yarn overs. Yarn overs, lace created with yarn overs in those sections. And the way you start is just a strip of garter stitch. You pick up stitches from the side, then at the bottom, and then you just knit like this. And the lace is what creates the increases, because usually when you're knitting lace using yarn overs, you'll yarn over and then knit two together. But here you just yarn over and you just keep on going. And the yarn that I'm using is from Svarta Fåret. It's the Lama Fine. Huh? It's the soft Lama Fine 100% baby llama in the color Black Beans, Zwarte Bonen 928, and it has a yardage of 166 meters per 50 grams, and I am using 3mm needles. I want these needles set free. They they have been on this shawl for far too long. I thought it was just going to be 2 days, but it's been almost 3 weeks, I think, at this point. But I'm going to finish it, I promise, today. I want to set them free and use them for some other projects, which I'll get to later, actually. But yeah, so last time I did say that I was having a bit of troubles. Well, not really troubles, but I was having a hard time memorizing the frill section, because you work reverse. Okay, you have the frill. One section is garter stitch, another section is reverse stockinette stitch, interchanged with 2 rows of stockinette stitch. And also in between those 2 sections, you occasionally work short rows. And the reason why I thought that was complex, or why I had a issue remembering it, was that I just hadn't worked on it. I was just racking my brain trying to find a reason about why I was struggling with it, but I just did not sit down with some music or just even silence and just look at the pattern and see how it's worked. But now that I have worked a number of these rows, I think I have the hang of it now. So I even closed the book and I can just do it just from the brain. Here's actually the back. The back looks pretty cool. So yeah, as you can see, it's again still the garter stitch on this side, but then you have the garter stitch, no, the reverse stockinette stitch here, and then you have more of the stockinette stitch here. Yeah, so I'm very much looking forward to this being done and I can go outside with it. I'm also wanting to work on some more mittens. The ones that I made at the start of this year, by the way, also happen to have been designed by Yoke. They let some wind through, so I need to find a way to stop that. And I was thinking of, I think you call it thrumming, just the felting thing that you put in. Well, I think that's a technique where you knit things and you have all these strands at the end. I'm not explaining this very well, but I'll put a picture of how it looks. So I was thinking maybe I can make a pair of mittens using that technique. I don't really have that thrumming material, but I do have unspun yarn, so I think I might try it with that. I don't know if that is something very conventional or if it's just not a good idea, but I'm willing to give it a try. I will look up on the internet first, maybe ask on Reddit if no one has asked before if that works as well. But yeah, that's kind of the game plan. I think I want maybe 2 more mittens just to have a bit of variety, because it also does seem that I'm going to have a lot of yarn left over from the Flora Slipover and the Johanne loop sweater, simply because just the fabric that this yarn makes is just very light, but it looks very dense still. I used 100 grams for in dark green. What? I used 100 grams of the chocolate yarn, and I only need 100 grams extra probably for the sleeves. So I'll have still 1 plate left of that, and I'm going to be left with a lot of amber as well. So I think it would be fun actually to maybe make matching mittens, or I don't know, another motif. In any case, the second scarf or shawl I wanted to talk about is the grid shawl. Yay! So the yarn finally came in. I am so excited for this. It's this sweater, it's this scarf right here, and yeah, just another design from Kaze Kobo. The Titicaca came in. This is a 100% alpaca lace weight yarn, which is quite similar to the lace weight yarn that was used in the sample. At least I think it is. It's the other one was about, I think, 70% or 85% mohair and then 15% nylon. But I did knit up a swatch, if I can find it here. Yes, a very tiny swatch. I don't really care too much about swatching when it comes to knitting up scarves, but I just wanted to see how the fabric looked. Yeah, that was more so the reason. So I knit this up with 2.5mm needles, and I like it, but I think I might want it just a bit lacier. I think I also used smaller needles than recommended, and this yarn is actually thicker than the recommended one, because this is 400 meters per 50 grams and the other had 500 meters per 50 grams. So in terms of colors, this is Passion, a very nice blue cobalty type yarn. This was the darkest blue that I could find. Unfortunately, it's called Midnight, but yeah, you can see it doesn't even look like there's much of a difference, to be honest. IRL a bit more than I think on camera, but in the picture it is very distinct. In any case, you win some, you lose some. I'm just happy that most of the colors match. I have this red called Kindred. I have a darkish green called, I took the label off because I made a swatch. It's called Amazon. And then a light green emerald, and then a sort of mustardy color clementine with some orange tints in there, and then we have mahogany brown. So I'm knitting this up for myself. I just thought it would be a fun, colorful project to work on, and my boyfriend said that he really liked the scarf when I showed it to him, And I said, oh, I could knit it up for you if you want. And he wasn't too sure about getting the yarn. So I thought, you know what? I'll just buy some yarn myself, make it for myself, and then if he ends up feeling jealous and I am still in the mood to knit up another one of these, I would love to make this with some silk mohair from Mayflower, because I've never tried their silk mohair. I generally don't use silk mohair that often, but I've seen online that they have a very nice color selection and they have a very, very deep blue. They have all the colors, to be honest, all the colors that I would need for this scarf. So who knows? We'll see. In any case, because this yarn came in, that also meant that the yarn that my boyfriend bought for his sweater came in as well. And yeah, this is Holst Garn's Coast in the color Wisteria. It's a fingering weight yarn, light fingering if I'm correct, something like 300 something meters? No, yes, 350 meters per 50 grams. It's 55% merino lambswool and 45% cotton. I am so excited to try this. He got a kilogram because on average, well, the two sweaters that I have knit up for him were in the range of 800 to 900 grams. So we just got a kilogram, and I'm going to be holding these two together, which is very nice because for one, it will knit up fast, and I wasn't planning on going with 3 strands because having to turn this into balls and then knit up would be a bit bothersome for such a huge project. So I'm just going to knit the sweater from these cones. The pattern has already been chosen. It's the Henley sweater from a Vogue Japan book, Simpuru Design no Menzenito, and it's just a henley with a broken rib, bottom up and in pieces flat. I'm very excited to see how it works up. I tried knitting a swatch with 4.5mm needles and it was very flimsy, wasn't looking too good. So I'm planning on trying it with 3.5mm needles. I don't think that my gauge is going to be the same as from the pattern. It had an Aran weight gauge, so something like 18 stitches per 10 centimeters, and I'm just it's not gonna work with this yarn holding it double. But oh yes, this was very economical because if you buy, I bought this straight from the Holst Garn website, and you pay about 33 euros for half a kilogram. So all in all, it cost my boyfriend about 66 euros to get the yarn, which is such a great deal for a men's size sweater of a very tall man. So I'm very excited for trying this yarn out for one, and just seeing also how soft it'll be on his skin. I've said before he's very sensitive to yarn and he doesn't like wearing things underneath his sweaters, so hopefully this is going to be the solution. And if this works out, I think I'm just going to buy, well, not me, he's going to buy a couple of he's going to buy a couple of sweater quantities of this yarn again, because the color range is just really, really good. There's so many shades of this yarn, and so hopefully in a couple of years we can replace all of his sweaters. Yes. Is that everything? Oh no. last thing, I'm gonna have to come back to the Isager Archives collection. I hope people don't think it's too boring that I keep talking about the same sweaters, so to speak. I try as much to bring in interesting information about construction and modification, and I try to experiment. So I hope that in that way it stays a bit interesting. But yeah, like I said, I don't know if I said, well, now that I am actually getting quite far with both the Johanna loop sweater and the Flora Slipover, I'm already thinking about the next two projects. I have the Esther sweater ready to go. I've made a swatch that just needs to be knit up, and so I was thinking about the next one that I wanted to work on, and I thought, I would like to work on a smaller project. I don't know if it's going to be necessarily quicker, but it's definitely smaller. It's the Kirsten shirt by Helga Isager, and originally I thought, oh, I would love to make it with Isager yarn, and I did the calculations, and it would be €55, and I thought, do I have something in my stash that I could use? And I remembered that I was working on this sweater. Well, you can't really see too much of it. I haven't really done much of it, but it's, I don't know who the pattern designer is again. I think it's Toshiyuki something something, a male Japanese knitwear designer. He had this sweater called Carnation that I was working on before I went on holiday, and I first worked on this with some West wool, and I was not feeling it. It was red and black, and I was not ready when I started that project, and so I tried to make a fresh start, find some new yarn, and I came up with these two colors. This is again Holst Garn. This is, the top color is called Jasper and the bottom one called Damask. I saw this color combination on Ravelry and I thought it looked splendid. So I need about 300 grams of this yarn, each of these yarns for the sweater. And I found a Dutch website by Alex, I'll leave a link in the description box below, that sold cones for €29 a piece. So half a kilo for €29. Luckily, she had both colorways, and so I bought them. And so I had 200, presumably I'll have 200 grams left of each color, and so I was thinking about what I could use that leftover yarn for, and I think I might just be able to use that for the Kirsten shirt, just because it's something very lightweight. It's very summery. I'll put a picture of how it looks here. I thought it was really cute. It has a quite deep armhole, I guess because it's a summery type shirt. It looks like it's for summer at the very least, and so it's nice to have some freshness, some space at the armpit section. Sorry. In any case, I thought it would look very nice with the very dark Jasper as the main color, and then the light Damask as the contrast color. I think that the original uses Twinny, which is pretty close, I think, to Holst Garn Supersoft, and mohair. But yeah, I think not having mohair in this project won't be the worst thing. So I think I'm gonna try that, make a swatch maybe in this coming week. Hopefully I'll be able to finish off the Johanna loop sweater at the very least, and the scarf is gonna get done today. So hopefully that'll work out this week. In a nutshell, lots of projects, stuff I'm thinking about. I'm very happy to have worked on the swan sweater, and now that I'm gearing up for at least 2 other projects that were in my autumn plans video, I have been very hesitant making those types of videos because in the past I would make them and then maybe knit up one piece of that entire video. And so now, well, last time in the summer, I made 2 of those videos, and I think I managed to make 3 pieces of each of those videos, and I had about 5 to 6 patterns that I had spoken about in there. So it's nice knowing that I can somewhat keep to a plan, to some structure. So I'm very excited for the end of the year and see how everything has worked out. In any case, I think that's everything for this episode. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon in a new episode. Bye bye!